The original model that I've created was based on restriction of time in the gym, restriction of people having certain time, equipment, everything else, and you can fit in everything that you need to in this model and be successful. What's going on? Luka back here with Coach's Corner, and there's a number of videos here on YouTube breaking down the small group personal training program design structure that I've been using for a long time. It's what I built the course on, which you can click and get the course as well. But the question that I get a lot of times is like, is this the only model based on time, based on block time? So if you've seen majority of the programs for our general population, we have a dynamic warm-up. After the dynamic warm-up, you have the strength and power block. So block one is about 14 minutes long. It's the strength and power block, right? We have two, I would say, compound lifts, usually in the lower rep range, 2 to 6 reps. We have something contrast with power, sprints, jumps, throws, things of that nature. Block two is muscle building, right? It's based on density training and building volume. And in block three is one of two things, conditioning or metabolic stress. I found that that's been the best structure for the clients that we train. But with that said, what I have found is that when you can do different programming based on different populations or different groups for your small group personal training. So what I wanted to do is actually go over a bunch of different I would say examples of what it would look like for instance, if we had a group that's got a very strength-based emphasis, almost like a powerlifting emphasis. I don't want to necessarily say that, but think like that squat, bench, deadlift. You could exchange it with a lot of different things, but I wanted to show you guys an example here of a program. Then I wanted to go over a more athletic emphasis, right? So let's say we took a piece of the pie, said, hey, we got a small group, but we want to work on even more athletic properties, right? So power, plyometrics, speed, acceleration. Would that outline be the same? And it's like, I'll show you a different structure for that one. Another one here is, I call it the over 40 washed up meathead, kind of like me, right? Where it has a reverse workout emphasis. I'll share this one with you. I'll do another one that's not even on the board right now. I'll probably flip around, and that might be a glute program. Right, it's like very glute dominant, I would say, small group. So for example, if you're going to launch a 8-week program, 8-week challenge, that's small group based for instance, building up your glutes. It might be oriented towards women, whatever it may be. How you can use this, I call it, they're just alternative programming. This is what I love about this model that I've been doing now for 14 years is very malleable, right? You're not like locked in. We're following the principles of the science of strength training and building muscle and hypertrophy. And again, we're just using this block model because for most gyms, this is what you're dealing with. Constraints in time, constraints in space, constraints in equipment, and this is a way to do it. Let's look at the more strength emphasis based, I would say, program first. So pretend that we've already done our dynamic warm-ups, and of course our dynamic warm-ups would also be adjusted to that specific, for instance, for goal, right? So the warm-ups might look a little bit different, but mostly they're going to be pretty much similar, right? But here, our block one would be just strength, okay? So if it was just strength, let's say we were going to work on our sumo deadlift. And so this would still be a 14-minute block like we usually do it, and we're going to work up to heavy sets of 3 for that sumo deadlift. But instead of doing a plyometric exercise here, we might do a filler. Right, so what may a filler here be? Well, I would possibly do, something that has like a pails and rails for the adductors, right? Because the sumo deadlift, we need to have good mobility, range of motion, and adductors. And we might do a core exercise, right? So we might do, for instance, adductors and a side plank to get them in a better position. Or we might also do some upper body windmills, right? So thoracic windmills, because our upper body exercise will be the barbell bench press. Right, so the way that would look like, just like our usual small groups, we do some ramp up sets, right? We have a 14-minute block, your first, second, maybe even your third set. They're all ramp up sets, right? And then you get to a heavy 3. And then you're working those heavy 3s in those 14 minutes. You're probably gonna get about 3, maybe 4 sets in. Same thing with the bench press, right? And we're doing these fillers in between, so we're not rushing from one exercise to the next. We have long enough breaks. This is focused on strength. Our usual model, we're going to do something that's going to be fast and plyometric here, but considering that this is a strength emphasis, this will be strength main lift. And then block 2, we would go to supplemental, right? What is the supplemental exercise that builds up the primary exercise? So maybe in block 2, what's going to build up the supplemental exercise? Because remember, in sumo deadlifts, there's a lot more quads involved than a regular deadlift, right? So we're going to go dumbbell walking lunges with a pause, right? So it might be 8 per side here, and then we're going to do an incline dumbbell bench press, right? So that's going to support our main bench press. And then we're going to do a hollow hold with the band pull apart, right? So I want to get some upper back work in with the core. So that's going to be, again, supplemental here. And this is going to be 12 minutes. Again, we're going to work in kind of like this density emphasis with a little bit of a slower tempo. And then block 3 is going to be accessory lifts. Winning, so for example, let's say there's a weak link for the triceps to build up that bench press. We're going to do those winning tricep extensions with the decline. We're going to do dumbbell chest supported rows because we do want to work that upper back up. That's going to improve the bench press. And also we just want to have, I would say, pushing and pulling here. And then we're going to have a hamstring curl variation. So that could be a glute ham raise. It could be actual machine. Okay. And then at the end, after block 3, if we have time, which here we usually would, we would do some type of finisher. You know, that could be farmer's walks, sleds, pushes, depending on what it is that we want to achieve, some kind of GPP on this, right? But now this looks more like hey, we have a purely strength-oriented small group. Again, I want to show you this block model and how it can be malleable and we can move the pieces around. The second one has a more athletic emphasis. So for example, this could be, that I actually have an athlete group. It could be that I have an athlete for life group where I'm like, hey, we're going to put more time and effort into the components on this side of the speed curve, right? So power, speed, strength, pure speed, okay, elasticity. And in block 1 would actually be a plyo speed power block, okay? And this might be a 12-minute block where we're gonna go low hurdle, lateral. So imagine a low hurdle. We're gonna do lateral hops, like really focusing on getting off the ground fast. And then we're gonna superset it with a rotational throw, right? So we're doing a lower body elasticity, upper body power drill, okay? And we're gonna go through that, like we're still in a timed block, okay? But we're gonna go through that 2 to 3 times. Then we're gonna do 3 broad jumps, walk back, long enough break. You tell people, hey, listen, we wanna have at least a 30, 40-second break here. And then we're gonna do a 10-yard acceleration, right? So what's gonna happen is that in this 12-minute block, we're gonna get 2 to 3, I would say, sets of this and a couple sets of this. But we start, so after our dynamic warm-ups, we're actually gonna emphasize that plyo speed, power, elasticity component. And again, we can get very granular here, right? We could also do trap bar deadlift jumps, superset with hurdle hops, right? What part of the continuum do we want to build for those clients/athletes? So we put that in first as block 1, making it a bit of a priority in that piece of the pie, and then we go to our strength block. Okay, so for example, now in our strength block, we might go trap bar deadlift cluster, so 2 + 2 + 1. And then we're gonna do a football bar, floor press, same thing, 2 + 2 + 1 cluster. And then here we might have a filler because we wanna slow people down, right? That's our strength phase. So we're gonna do trap bar deadlift, long break, minute and a half, go to football, floor press, and then give somebody a filler. So for instance, couch stretch, and for example, we might do a couch stretch, and again, something that creates some thoracic mobility, right? So now we're spending 12 minutes here. We're gonna spend 14 minutes in our strength block. And then we're gonna go to, I just call it armor building, but really this is our supplemental strength, right? So double kettlebell squat. We got our chest supported row, a push-up variation because we wanna make sure the scap moves well. And for instance, a dumbbell RDL. So we're getting the rest of our, like for instance, we're getting a squat pattern in, we're getting a hinge pattern in, we're getting our pull pattern in, and we're getting our reach pattern in. And again, this can be modified, right? But this is an under-hour session now that if I was having a group of athletes, I could use the small group training model based on the blocks, but I'm rearranging it a little bit because I'm looking at, okay, what is it that they need to develop? What's more important? What are we gonna give more of that piece of the pie to, right? And you can kind of now see, now time, like for instance, how do we determine time? We determine time based on, one is experience. Like I've done a lot of this, so I know the time frame that people are gonna get XYZ amount of volume in. So I think that's an important factor here. Number 3 is this over 40 washed up knee hit. Now I talked about reverse workouts, right? Where you start the workout with exercises that you'd sometimes finish with. It's almost like an extra warm up. So block 1 in that over 40 washed up knee head could be, I actually really like this, is a primer feel good block. Right here, exercise number 1, we'd go calf raises with a long stretch, right? So imagine that you could do single leg calf raise or double leg calf raise with load, like 3 to 5 second stretch at the bottom, full range of motion at the top, and we got 10 reps on this. Then we have single leg RDL with a kettlebell pass, right? So I'm in an RDL position and I'm passing the kettlebell left to right. What am I working on? Hip stability, proprioception, right? Because again, if we can get that brain to be like, hey, the hip is stable, it's gonna produce more force when we get to part 2. Number 3 is band primer series, which is what I usually do is put a band around the rack. I'm gonna do flies for 12 to 15. I'm gonna do band pull aparts for 10 to 15. And I'm gonna do band dislocations for 10 to 15. And then I'm gonna go to a hamstring curl variation, right? If we can get blood flow activation into the hamstrings, a squat is gonna feel so much better. So here we're getting some ankle dorsiflexion, we're getting stability, right? We're getting the upper back, shoulders, chest, getting blood flow in there, same with the hamstrings. And this is not meant to, like, you're not gonna go balls to the wall and like crush yourself. This is gonna be feel good. I'm gonna have more range of motion, everything's gonna be feel better. Think about like WD-40 in the joints, right, lubricated. Then we go to our strength and power block. Right, and if you've ever coached a lot of people over 35, 40, been beat up, had joint issues, injuries and stuff like that, they will absolutely love this. And so then when you get to here, they'll feel better than they ever have doing these bigger lifts. Like for example, front squat variation. So let's say most people can do a barbell front squat or a safety bar front squat. If not, we'll get them into a double kettlebell position. So we're gonna work up to a heavy. So this is, again, but instead of this being 14 minutes, this will probably be like 8 minutes, right? Maybe a 10, but 8 to 10 minute block. So it's a shorter block. We go to 14-minute block here. And now we got front squat. We got box jumps for 5. And then we have a pike pull-up for 6. So anybody has good shoulders, they can do a regular chin-up variation. Other people can do a barbell or a TRX pull-up variation, but go heavy on it for 6. So bam, we got our strength block with some power in there, but they got everything feeling really good in phase 1, then block 2. And then block 3 would be muscle building, right? And I just give some examples, like a kickstand RDL, like pushing against the wall, offset, right? Nice and controlled, hitting that for 12. Max, so we do a push-up variation for maximum reps. We got single arm cable rows, those feel good. And then, you know, we might do a finisher and do some Bulgarian split squat stuff, some lunge variation, get that single leg working. But you can see how we turn these around. Now, from a marketing perspective and a marketing standpoint, think about how you could now, we always talk about these small groups being up to 16-ish people. If you got a smaller gym, it might be 10, 12, whatever it may be. But I could go into a small group and do a program called, hey, the Athlete for Life program, right? Where I could do something like, you know, over 40, right? Over 40, get athletic, build muscle, and go with this model, right? I could go a more powerlifting based small group and go with this model. Or for example, you know, what if we were gonna go into a glute building, right? So it's like, we've actually done this before where it was a 8-week program for women for building their glutes up, right? So it's an 8-week glute building program. That was a small group format. And in this scenario, what would happen, I could go the same way. So I'm gonna just kind of write this from scratch. So where block 1, we could work up to a barbell hip thrust to a heavy 6 with a pause, right? And the filler would be, for example, opening up the hips, so it's like a couch stretch. Because remember, like we wanna go, so block 1 would be strength or mechanical tension, right? So if we look at muscle building, the 3 mechanisms, mechanical tension, muscle damage, and metabolic stress, then we go block 1, we go strength. We build up and to work up to a heavy 6, and maybe do 2 to 3 heavy sets there, right? A filler is couch stretch. We open up the hips. We do a core drill here. And then we might do a pull-up because we still want to get some upper body working. So some pull-up variation for 6. Again, we're going to work in that 14-minute rep range here. And we go block 2. So this is a muscle building block. And notice, it is a full body program, but it's definitely biased towards glute building. So here, we might go with a Bulgarian split squat. Nice and controlled 8 with a pause per side. We want to have some type of, so we're going to do a push-up variation. We want to break it up. Boom. We might go max on this and then do a RDL. So we'll do a dumbbell RDL for 10. Okay, now that'll be our 12-minute block here. And then block 3 will be metabolic stress. And for here, for instance, we might do 2-minute rounds of banded variations, right? So it might be like lateral band walks, monster walks, right? Going and opening up. Like there's a lot of different stuff we can do here. If we have cables, we can do that. This is gonna be about an 8-minute block. We might do 2 rounds of this and then build it up over the weeks, right? And the thing is, another day, instead of having a hip thrust, we might work up to a deadlift, right? A heavier deadlift and have different exercises here, all glute building. But you can see we got strength, we got muscle damage here, might be an eccentric on here, and obviously build up the volume. And then here we have metabolic stress. And now this becomes a small group that's all based around glute building, and it can be specific to, for example, a women's program, right? Now, these just real quick are 4 different ways that you could organize, and it's not all the different ways, but what I wanted to do is show you some examples of how malleable this is and how you can move the pieces around based on what we want to achieve and still staying within those confines, because again, the original model that I've created was based on restriction of time in the gym, restriction of people having certain time, equipment, everything else, and you can fit in everything that you need to in this model and be successful. So if you like this, again, because what I'm going to do is in the small group mastery, I'm going to include some 4-week programs of each of these. So it's going to be a bonus inside of the small group. So you'll have months more of programming that you can use just like this. But also I wanted to show you guys what you can program through now for your small groups and use it. So if you like this content, make sure you subscribe. Number 1, make sure you let me know how you're using it. If you got any more questions for us to create the content. And I will see you next time in the Coach's Corner. Peace out.